What's up, everyone? I'm Dub Jellison, and I'm here with Purdue head basketball coach Matt Painter. Matt, how you doing?
Good. Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm super excited about this. I honestly can't believe it's happening. But it's kind of a crazy ride. But we're kind of in the midst of this whole COVID-19 pandemic, and I know it's hit the whole world hard, but it's hit the sports world hard as well. How have you and the team kind of been impacted by this, and how have you guys been handling it?
Yeah. Well, a lot of times in coaching, as you start to, you go through a lot of different things. You're there for your players because you've experienced a lot more than they have. And so you're trying to help them, kind of navigate through juggling academics, basketball, making good decisions, preparing themselves for after basketball, trying to develop into a professional, but also understanding the big picture of things. And so you go through a lot of different things that you're really accustomed to and used to, and you try to help your guys. And so when you deal with something like COVID and just this pandemic, like you've not been through it before, so listen to your doctors, and everybody has an opinion. It's important to listen to those that that have a medical background and a grasp and an understanding to the best of their ability of what's going on. I think we've all learned more each day, each week, each month, as this has progressed. So I'm just trying to keep them safe, making smart decisions. And when you coach, you're no different than a parent. Sometimes your wisdom falls on deaf ears, and you have to take that. It's no different than in a game of basketball. You're going to have slippage in a basketball game. So whatever you teach, there's going to be game slippage, and you try to really prepare yourself for that slippage. Or the same thing, you're trying to help your guys and talk about, you got 15 guys and you got 13 guys doing what they're supposed to, and you got 2 guys that don't. Well, it's going to affect everybody else, and they have to understand the seriousness. And that's what we've really talked to them about, is that, like, some people look at it and dispute things within the COVID-19, when in reality, you could be a carrier, you could get it, and then you might have it and it might pass for 10 to 14 days or 2 weeks, of 2 to 3 weeks, whatever. And then it really not really affect you more than, like, say, the flu. But then if you passed it on, it could affect somebody, and they could pass away. So just trying to make sure they understand how real it is, and, and the big picture of what's going around, and that, we have to do our part. So you keep that, from a priority standpoint, you keep the health and safety as number one. They need their normal ways of operating. And so I think that helps. I think a mental health piece comes into it too, that, if you don't have that normal outlet that you've had your whole life, and that's really basketball a lot of times for young players, and for people that have just put so much time into it, it's their sanctuary. And so when you take some of that away, that's a tough struggle, especially when guys have to quarantine and lock down for 14 days. So it's definitely something new, but definitely something that, you have to keep learning, and listening to the medical staff, and just trying to help your guys, from day to day. There's been a lot of changes. So, with that being said, we can work our guys out now. And so we're working our guys out in small groups. Whoever lives together works out together. And so we keep it real simple. So we're not crossing, too many paths.
That's really smart. I didn't know you guys were doing that. So how have these kind of circumstances impacted you guys or you and your coaching staff, in terms of how you handle coaching during practice, I guess, right now, because we're not playing games? And is it any different from how you guys had pre-COVID?
Yeah, well, it's a lot different. Obviously, you have masks on. You're trying to keep your distance to the best ability. I just really oversee things. I don't touch a basketball as the head coach. I stay on the sideline and I sit. We have one assistant coach that is with each group. And then we have a couple of GAs that are with all the groups. They've been exposed to all of our guys. And so the one thing that we want to do if we get a positive test, is not to knock out our whole team. So within our group, now they would have to go and quarantine that group, but they live together also, like I mentioned. And then that one assistant coach would have to quarantine also. So now you got, other assistant coaches, the head coach, and then 75% of your team that now can go on. And so I think that's what really the $1 million question is going to be, is when we throw 40,000 students on our campus, what that looks like. I think that's going to be the toughest, part of this whole equation, because, you can have a majority of the, online classes and we can quarantine and do a lot of different things within our basketball program. We have a very, very sterile environment. You're wiping down the balls each time between workouts. You're keeping everything clean. You're wearing masks. You're doing everything in your power. You're limiting the people, or you're stopping people from coming in and out of your arena. And so you can do all that thing. But once everything stops and everybody splinters into the social space, now what kind of decisions are guys going to make? And what kind of decisions are, students going to make? Because then everybody looks at it and from a mature lens and an understanding of how serious it is. There's a lot of young people that do. But then you're going to have other people say, it's not that big a deal, when in reality it is a big deal. And so what's that going to look like on all these campuses? And so we start school 3 weeks from Monday. And so that's the big question. And we're all kind of waiting to see. But hopefully, everybody can make really good decisions and understand the big picture of things. And it can be a lot smoother than, we're really projecting.
Mm-hmm. So how do you see the 2020-2021 college basketball season playing out? I know football is still up in the air.
Right.
Where a lot of people are optimistic that it's going to happen, but you just never know.
Right.
And I think the higher ups can't take that risk. If a lot of people start getting it, that won't be able to happen. So do you think the college basketball season will happen, and what precautions do you think will be in place, like no fans and things of that nature?
Right. Well, I think it's too early to say. We have to be patient right now. There's a lot of things that are going before us, and you want to learn from, other organizations, other entities, Major League Baseball, the NBA, soccer. And so now, obviously, a lot of fall sports are being canceled. And the Big Ten, our conference in football, they have canceled the non-conference. And so they obviously want to control everybody that's going to play against each other when it's Big Ten versus Big Ten. I think they have a better chance of doing that. But can they still, be able to do that? I think once practices start, I think that's really going to help of getting a lot of feedback from all the campuses on the Big Ten. When school comes back and practice is going and we're starting to morph into getting closer to games, what does that look like? And so a lot of the questions that, that you have, they have. And a lot of times, you can get to those answers, but right now we don't have those answers. I think a lot of people are in that holding pattern. And I think basketball is even, more in that holding pattern because we don't have to make our decision right away. Our season doesn't start. Our first games aren't until November. But there's just different scenarios. And so you can have one scenario of the season staying the way it is. Obviously, I don't see fans with the closed air arenas. I don't see fans being able to be a part of it. But you need people to run a game. You have your scores table. You have the people that are there. You have your officials that are coming in. So there's a lot of different people in and around the game to make it function, that will have to be there outside of fans, it won't be a big number, but it's still going to be enough. And I think that has to be taken into consideration. But obviously pushing back, a lot of people are stopping their classes, after Thanksgiving. So one model could be 2 to 3 weeks of quarantine after Thanksgiving. So we can create a bubble, so to speak. Yeah. And then being able to start your season, and that would probably be a conference-only season. A lot of people have talked about another model of starting in January, still having March Madness, playing just conference games at that time. There's another model of starting it a little bit later than that, and then having kind of a May Madness. And it's obviously in Indianapolis, so you'd have to definitely have your May Madness before the Indianapolis 500. Just because of all the numbers of people that come and hotels that get taken. I don't think you could have those two type of events at the same time. Matter of fact, you can't have those two events at the same time. So I think a lot of there's just kind of, 4 or 5 different models that are kind of out there. We're kind of waiting for the data to present it itself. And so we can be, safe. Obviously the elephant in that huge space right there is the vaccine. The vaccine, if that's something that could come into play at any time. Most people gauge that that's beginning of 2021, that's when that will happen. Obviously, that's a guesstimation, but I think that's the best guesstimation we've had from the people that are trying to handicap when it's going to happen. So, that's where it is. I say all that, but it's all in theory, and it's all in, like I said, guesstimation, and really just kind of in that holding pattern. I think it's really important for all of us, and we don't like this, is to be patient. And fans don't like it, people don't like it, but you have to be able to be smart and wear your mask, do social distancing, just do everything in your power, to make it better and try to make it as safe as possible.
Mm-hmm. I think this has given not only students at Purdue, but everyone in the whole world a lot of diversity to go through.
Yes.
I think that you guys, the way you coach and the culture that you set forth, you want the players to overcome that adversity. You've done a good job of instilling that in the players. So how do you think that beginning in your first season at Purdue, how do you think that you've been able to establish that culture and kind of help Purdue become a hard-minded team?
Right. Well, just, trying to recruit guys that, have those attributes and have those values in the first place, and then just keep reinforcing those things as a group. You want guys that have winning ways. You want guys that, that are unselfish, that give themselves to the team. And any team that you have that is great, you have sacrifice. And you find out a lot about guys when you go through adversity. You just do. You find out a lot about guys. And even sometimes when you struggle, you have the right crew because of how they handle things and how they work towards things. Now, on the contrary, sometimes when you go through things, you see how you might have guys that, point fingers or, won't accept things or make excuses and things like that. And we've all had that type of behavior at some time in our life. We've all had, those feelings, and it's kind of natural feelings when things go wrong, and like you almost, have to have the right people around you and the right people helping you. And that's what you try to do as a coach, is like coach them to understand how to deal with problems, how to deal with adversity. And then, just be a truth teller. And sometimes you're going to offend people when you're a truth teller. So that's all I've tried to be as transparent as possible about my shortcomings as a person, and especially my shortcomings when I was their age, and just try to help them from a basketball standpoint and a social and an academic standpoint. And I think when you do those things, they grow and they learn, and, they get better. And then anytime you got guys that are doing that and they're looking out for their teammates and their understanding of those things, and, you can grow together, and, mistakes and losses can actually, make your team better 2-3 months down the road. And so that's all we try to do. But we try to look for it in the recruiting piece, and now when you're a lot of that work's already been complete. When you're trying to shape them from day one, and they haven't been around people, or they haven't had some of those things, those attributes, those values instilled in them right away, awful hard to erase 18 years. There has to be some level of foundation of understanding right and wrong socially, right and wrong basketball wise. Because if you have the ability and you have the talent and you put your best foot forward, and you try hard, and, you're trying to help other people, good things are going to happen. Very rarely do bad things happen. Normally when somebody struggles at our level is because they normally do it to themselves. That they're not applying themselves. They're taking shortcuts, and it catches up to you. It really does, no matter how talented you are. And that's something that gets lost a lot in our sport. People make a big deal about talent. You have to have the talent, there's no doubt about it. But the other things really leads to your production if you have that ability.
Mm-hmm. And obviously you played for Coach Katie. He's been around the team a lot. What have you taken from learning from him and translated that to your coaching style?
Yeah. Well, he was, he's a good guy and, hard-nosed guy and blue collar and very honest, sometimes too honest when you play for him. But as you get older, I really appreciated that. I appreciated that value that he had. You never guessed where he stood. And I've always tried to be that way. I've always, sometimes I try to soften my approach sometimes a little more, but just be as honest and straightforward with people. And even if it's going to be an awkward conversation, when you're being honest, it doesn't mean you have to have it in front of other people, but just, try to keep showing them and telling them what you feel is best for them and their growth. And, I think guys really appreciate that in time, even though you're going to have people that avoid conflict all the time. You're not helping them. Yeah. You're just not. The whole world's telling them how great they are. And in reality, the whole world doesn't care if you can make a three-pointer. After you get done playing basketball, it's, just because you're a good basketball player doesn't make you, above or better than anybody else. And so trying to keep them grounded and humbled and understand the big picture and just how fortunate they are. They've worked really hard for this opportunity, but also be grateful for the opportunity. And when you can do those things, and, people are going to gravitate to you because they see how, you are, and you appreciate them and you appreciate the opportunity that you have. Because there's a lot of people, if one person comes to our team, there's a lot of people that's helped that one person be successful. Nobody's successful by themselves.
Mm-hmm. So last season, it was a rougher season compared to the ones before, where you guys were winning Big Ten championships. In your mind, what kind of went wrong with that season in terms of the inconsistencies?
Yeah.
And maybe not the success that you guys had in previous years?
Yeah. Well, when you're inconsistent, it means you're up and down. So you got to focus on the up, and what led to you having the success that you had. We beat 5 teams that were in the top 25.
Mm-hmm.
We had a couple road games that we won late in the Big Ten season against Iowa, against Indiana, and we beat a good Virginia team, not a great Virginia team at our place. We beat the champions of the Big Ten, again, Michigan State. We were able to beat them. So as you kind of look, down the line, and you see some of those wins, and a couple of those wins were really good wins. And we beat Virginia and Michigan State by 30 in both of those games. And so why were we able to play so well, and what was different from that game, to other games? And so, and that's what inconsistency is, is the up and the downs. And so what was the difference when you struggled? And we didn't shoot the ball well on the road. I didn't think our decision-making from our guard play was good enough. You could argue maybe our best passer on our team was Travion Williams as a center. And so, but we just weren't consistent. You got to be able to hang your hat somewhere. And I thought the previous year, like Grady Eifert and Ryan Klein, you knew what you're getting from those guys every single night. Now, maybe Ryan didn't make 7 threes in one game and he only made 2 in the other, but, you knew what they were going to get. They weren't going to turn the ball over. They were going to run our stuff and be efficient. They were going to know their defensive assignment. They were going to compete. They were going to play hard. We just didn't get that consistent production across the board. And so we looked at it. We changed lineups a lot. We played big. We played small, just searching for that right combination to help us. And with that being said, our league was really good. We were going to get 9 to 11 teams in the NCAA tournament. And so as a coach, we just didn't get that consistent play. And that's what you have to be able to get. But offensively, I didn't think we were good enough at times. We just weren't productive enough, from making threes to making decisions. Our decision-making's got to be better. We have to get better guard play next year. And it doesn't mean we didn't have some strides. I thought Sasha Stefanovic and Eric Hunter, going from their freshman to sophomore years, I thought they really made good strides, for us. And so I was happy with that. I was happy with Travion Williams making that stride. Aaron Wheeler's a guy that I thought his effort was really good. He rebounded the ball better. He did some good things on the defensive end, but offensively he didn't have a good year, and he didn't make threes. And so, hopefully him having kind of a bounce back type year for us But I thought he improved in other areas. It's just hard to be confident when you struggle doing something that, he's good at. He's a good shooter. He just didn't shoot well. I think it affected some other games and obviously affected his minutes. So hopefully he can learn from that adversity and be good. But that's going to be real important. And I mentioned those 4 guys because we don't have seniors on our team next year. Those are our oldest guys. Those are our juniors. So it's going to be real important with their leadership and their quality of play. With that being said, we have some guys that are returning. 2 guys that redshirted, Isaiah Thompson, who I thought had a solid freshman year for us, played close to half the game. We have 3 freshman players for us. And so, we're excited. And with a couple of the guys that we've had transfer, it opens up for those guys to be able to play. Zach Edey, Emmanuel Dewana, to be able to get some opportunities, to play along our front line. Mason Gillis and Brandon Newman are our 2 redshirt guys that'll play for us. And, we're excited about them. I mentioned Ethan Morton and Jaden Ivey. Zach Edey are 3 freshmen. So those guys have done really well in workouts. And so I'm excited about it. I'm excited that I think our decision-making is going to be better. I think our ability to make shots is going to be better. I am concerned from a defensive standpoint. The 2 transfers that we lost were both really good defensive players. Matt was a good rim protector. Nojel could shut people down. For us, I think rebounding the basketball on both ends is going to be important, but getting some guys we can hang our hats on in terms of just their overall effort and their overall defensive production. And but then, kind of like you talking about, like that overall theory of inconsistency, which a lot of coaches in the country you battle, but I think we've been real consistent, the previous 5 years. But before that, a couple of years, we had some inconsistency. And before that, we went to 6 straight NCAA tournaments. So, we've been able to show that we've had a lot of consistency across the board. You would call our program consistent, but last year we were inconsistent. And so you try to dive into that, but you also try to learn from it. I think we have some guys that will have better years than they had last year. Then I think we're adding some young players that I think will help us immediately.
Mm-hmm. So who are some of the guys that you think should make the jump in terms of on-court success, whether it be scoring more points, getting more rebounds, things of that nature? And then who are like the two to three most important guys in terms of becoming leaders? Because like you mentioned, we lost Matt Harms, Nojo Eastern, and also Evan Boudreau and Tommy Luce.
Mm-hmm.
Those are all the older guys. They all left. Yeah. Oh, Jahad Proctor. So who are some of the guys that you think should step into that leadership role?
Yeah, well, the people that earn it. I mean, anybody can be a leader. If you're going to play a lot, you're going to have to lead. And a lot of times you get some guys that, can lead by example. It doesn't, just because you're saying the right thing doesn't mean you're doing it. You got to be able to back it up. And, we've had some really good leadership in our program. And right now I really want our guys to be able to kind of earn that. We haven't announced captains like we did the previous year. Both of the guys we announced captains previous year transferred. So I don't think I did a good job of really digging into that and getting that figured out. Because if you're a guy that's supposed to lead your team, you stay with your team through adversity. That's what leaders are. Leaders, you don't take off when something goes wrong. And so now we're kind of pumping the brakes and not really announcing that. And we'll have vote, but I also want them to earn it. We haven't had the same summers as we've had before, because of the COVID. So they haven't had the same, responsibilities and the same time together as they have had in the past on the court. So we want our guys to be able to earn that. But I would start with just kind of a knee-jerk reaction is the guys that I mentioned before. Those guys that are now sophomores, they're going to be juniors, the 4 oldest guys in our program. And Sasha and Aaron are both redshirt guys. So they're the 2 oldest guys in our program. So they've been around the most. This is both of their 4th years. So, but I don't really look at the guys to make the biggest jump. Everybody that's returning, you should have an advantage over people that haven't been in the program. Doesn't mean you have the same talent level or the same upside or the same abilities, but you have a feel of the program and you have an experience of the program. That should give you an advantage, in my opinion. But I don't think that, really excludes anybody from being able to make a jump. Sometimes who people think are going to make a jump don't, and vice versa. And so, we look for all of our guys to improve. And, we don't want to cap anybody out and say, okay, these guys are our leaders when no one's really established themselves in there. Doesn't mean we don't have people trying, because they are. But I think it's important when you go through the experience we had last year, learn from it. Now if you're going into a season like we did 3 years ago and you have 4 seniors like Isaac, Vince, Dakota, and PJ, that's easy. That's easy. Those guys are our captains. They've proven themselves. They've been consistent. They've been loyal. And now those are your captains. And so when we did that with Ryan and Grady, that was perfect. Now when we did it in the last year, it didn't work. That didn't work. So as a coach, it's like, you never make the same mistake twice. At least you don't do it in back-to-back years. You try to say, okay, what went wrong there? And sometimes you don't have that answer. But if you're patient and you communicate with your guys and you keep things open, hopefully that answer comes to you, and then you do what's best for your program.
Mm-hmm. So I know we've kind of run over the time that we agreed on. I just wanted to ask you a few things before I let you go. I want to see who do you think is the best overall player that you've ever coached? Is it guys like Etwan, Jawan, Robbie, or is it someone most recently like Carson or Caleb Swanigan?
Any of those guys. Like all 5 of those guys were All-Americans. All 5 of those guys were great. They all were really special for us at Purdue. And the one thing that you don't do is you don't duplicate greatness. Like you think there's going to be somebody come through that's going to be like a Carson Edwards for you. They're not. You're only going to see one Carson Edwards. Like you're only going to see one Robbie Hummel. Right after we lost Robbie Hummel, we were like, hey, we got to get another guy like Rob. We still haven't got another guy like Rob. Even though like Vince Edwards was really, really good, Vince Edwards was still his guy. Like we won't go and get another guy like Vince Edwards. He was, scored 1,800 points, had 800 rebounds, was one of the most successful players in school history, played the second most minutes in the history of our school. And so he was really good, and obviously a 2-time All Big Ten player. But Caleb Swanigan almost led the nation in rebounding. Juwan Johnson's probably the only guy that's had a season where he didn't have a bad game. That's hard to do. Like you play 35 games, you're going to have a couple bad games. I mean, like he would have bad games, and you'd be like, man, he wasn't very good. He'd have 25 and 14. You're like, that's a career night. But that's how good he got. He really made some strides. And Etwan Moore was a 4-time All-Conference player. That's hard to do. 2 times first team, 2 times second team. Robbie Hummel was a 3-time first team. So Juwan Johnson was 2-time first team, 1-time second team. But the year he was second team, he was the best big man in our league. All 5 of those guys were guards that were ahead of him. And so all those guys were good. Carl Landry is the one that's probably had the best NBA career. Mm-hmm. And I coached him for 1 year. I was an assistant for the other year. But, he was a fabulous player. We just weren't good enough for him to get some of the same accolades as those other guys. That's what a lot of people don't realize is those guys all had great careers, but they all played for great teams, partially because of them, without question. But that's what you got to do to get big-time individual awards like, Caleb Swanigan and Juwan Johnson were both the Pete Newell Big Man of the Year award. And, both of those guys, won Big Ten championships, got runner-up Big Ten championships, won games in the NCAA tournament. And, you're going to get those awards. When your team has success and you have individual success, it's really going to help them. So, but I couldn't, go grab a guy out of it. I can talk about their, Carson's probably the most prolific shooter. Each one's probably the best scorer. Robbie's probably the best all-around player. Juwan Johnson's a shot blocker, shot maker. Caleb Swanigan's probably the best rebounder. He is the best rebounder in that group. And so he's, as a passer, either him or Travion's probably the best passing big man. AJ Hammonds is probably the most talented guy we've ever had. Just, you could do it all. Move, block shots, 7 foot, shoot, go over either shoulder, just talent for a 7 foot, 250-pound man, just a lot of ability in there. So that answers your question without answering your question.
Yeah. I mean, I understand how you can't pick just one. We've had so many great players.
Right.
And then the last thing I wanted to ask you, we've talked a lot about leadership during this interview. Who do you think has been the best leader that you've ever coached as a head coach at Purdue?
And that's it's a good question. I think all those guys that I mentioned, led by example. It's so important that the best player in your team or the best couple players in your team, they carry a big stick, and that's, everything kind of falls in line. If that guy's a hard worker and that guy sacrifices and he does what's best for the team, it makes it really easy to coach. And that makes it fun. When you got your best player is sometimes difficult or whatever, it makes it really hard because now guys don't kind of fall in line to, do the little things and sacrifice and, all the necessary, things that nobody wants to do that everybody has to do if you want to have a great team. If you want to kind of separate from good to great or great to special, those things are really important. I'm trying to kind of think here. Rayfeld Davis was a really good leader for us. But, you can lead in a lot of different ways. PJ Thompson did a lot of, really good things for our program, but he was a more reserved, quiet, behind the scenes, type of a guy in terms of a leader. Keaton Grant, was that way too, kind of, had played with 4 pros. It's hard. Keaton Grant played 10, 11 years overseas, and it's hard. You got 4 NBA guys. You got Carl Landry, Juwan Johnson, Ejuan Moore, Robbie Hummel. How's it hard to, to kind of get in there? And he did some things behind the scenes of just, leading our group. But all those guys I mentioned before were, did a great job of leading also. But I would probably have to go in that route with like somebody like a Rayfeld Davis, PJ, KG, those guys. Rob Hummel was very good. Robbie Hummel was very selfless. He was really a role player that was an All-American. He just did all those little things. Very selfless. The one thing about him, like he could score 4, he could score 25. And as long as Purdue won, he literally didn't care. He just wanted to win. A lot of times when you get guys that are big-time scorers, they want to win, but they also want to win and score 30. Yeah. And so they kind of have that bone to them, which kind of makes them good too. Kind of that little bit of selfishness always makes a score a little bit more dangerous because they always believe in themselves and they always believe like, give me the ball and you 4 go play euchre in the corner and I'll take this over. So, but I would say the guys that I mentioned right there.
Yeah. Like I said, we kind of went over time, but thank you so much for doing this.
No problem.
It's truly an honor. I've been looking up to you since I was 4 or 5 years old. It's kind of a dream come true to actually be able to sit down and talk with you, even though.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, for sure. Everyone stay safe. Make sure you guys are staying safe, and good luck next year.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.